So I finally got to move to the interior of the room, and in order to cover the walls, I actually was able to buy some 6-foot by 8-foot interior exterior carpet at Home Depot. And this stuff was pretty light. It was easy to cut. And when I first started looking at how I was going to actually get it on the walls, I was thinking about using the carpet glue that I'd used before, but then I thought, well, if I get it up and want to make any changes or anything, I certainly don't want to have to rip that off and then clean the adhesive off the wall and everything. So I used 5/8" heavy-duty staples. And as I went through, I tried to cover all the surfaces and tried to trim the lines as close as I could so that they would actually look kind of neat. Around the doors and the corners at the ceiling, there was a little bit of a gap, but I was able to go back a little bit later and put some trim strips in there to seal that area up just cosmetically. It probably wouldn't have affected anything, but it looks better. My air system that I built, put some additional padding inside it. The door I was able to cover and got that on. I actually attached it with Velcro, and the Velcro is holding it on really well. I've used the Velcro in other places and it's pretty tight. So all of my connections, my video and USB, are going to be going back over Cat 5. When I first started looking at how to get the video and everything into the room, one of the big problems was the length of the cables. So if you're into computers or whatever, you know that VGA has a certain length that you can go before you start getting image degradation. HDMI is the same way, DVI as well. So I had done this before. So I thought, well, why don't I just run it over Cat 5e, which I did. And I was able to use some of my networking skills, which I hadn't used in a while. As I was putting everything together, one of the little hiccups was the fact that I was using Leviton keystone jacks, but I had Legrand faceplates, and they're almost the same size, and they really should be the same size. The problem was that the openings where the top of the keystone jack actually locks into place were a little bit too tight. So on a couple of them, I actually had to take a razor blade and just shave a little bit of the plastic off. But by doing the punch downs and getting everything in place, I really had some good solid connections. Of course, before everything was done, I'd go ahead and test everything and make sure that I had good connections so I'd get good conduction. The total distance that I was running was about maybe 15 to 16 feet, and so it wasn't a long distance. Cables I routed through a raceway, and part of the cable is left out because this wall here is going to be taken out next year. But for now, I've got everything bundled up, and I'm running down through the raceway into a surface mount wall box, and that's where I'll be terminating everything down here. So the next phase was actually getting the carpet in, and by now I'm getting pretty excited as far as actually getting to a point where the room's almost done. I have never actually laid carpet, so I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I've been around other people who have laid carpet, but I had never done it. So I went and got the tack strips, was able to cut those, get those in place. My son-in-law had given me the carpet that I'm going to put in to the room, and it's a really nice carpet, real thick. And all I had to do then was buy the tack strips, which cost me, I think, $5, $3, something like that. They weren't much. And the other thing that I had to do was buy the pad. Pad didn't cost that much, and this is not a real thick pad. This is a little less than a ½ inch thick, probably somewhere around 3/8 of an inch actually, but it's a pretty good pad. So now with the layer of concrete and the plywood and then the foam and then another layer of plywood and now the carpet padding, that's going to absorb some vibration and everything. So I'd never really done this with carpet, so I watched, like I said, watched a lot of YouTube videos, and the carpet was probably 3 times bigger than the room, so I really had to wrestle with it to get it cut down to shape. I didn't want to make any mistakes. I wanted to make sure that I cut it and stretched it and got it into place so that I didn't make a mess of it. And it actually went pretty well. And then I got the threshold down. I bought a wooden threshold and put that down, and that really finished it off really well. So my keystone jacks out here, I actually numbered so that I could remember which ones was going to video 1, video 2, audio, and USB. So I've got 3 different connections there. Of course, I used my multimeter here, my network tester, to make sure that everything was going to pass. And popping the keystone jacks in was just really started getting exciting at that point, because I was getting really close to being done. And after working on the room for a year, being able to get to this point and actually looking forward to being able to use it was exciting. But I had to make sure that I didn't rush, that I didn't go and make any mistakes or anything like that. Everything needed to be solid. So everything passed, all the connections were good, and since the connections were good, I knew I'd get good audio and video. And the next step, of course, was to actually identify the jacks, the ports on the jack. There's nothing like trying to figure out what's going where after the fact if I don't have it labeled. So I did get some labels on them, which is it's a step up for me. Usually I don't label them. I built the table out of plywood and 2x4s. I think the total cost to do the table was around $30 because it was $22 for the plywood. I put U-boats on the legs of the table to do a disconnect from the floor. I sent a floor plan with my measurements off to RLX, and an audio engineer there, Niall Wright, drew up a plan, told me what I needed to buy, sent it back. I called my Sweetwater sales engineer, Derek Sinistraro, and he got these out to me really quick. Now, when I first put them up, just to make sure that I wasn't really messing them up, I put them up with double stick tape just to make sure I was doing it right. And from the time that I got the very first wall done to the time that I finished off with the door, it was absolutely an amazing difference. A few days later, I took them down, took the tape off very carefully, didn't damage any of the tiles, and was able to use the RLX Tube Tack Pro and put them right back up. And when I hung them on the ceiling, I had T-pins that I stuck in at least 2 of the corners to keep them up until the glue dried. The glue dried really, it cures in 48 hours, but it tacked up and everything in about 30 minutes. So altogether, it was excellent. I'm really happy with it. So now I'm just really looking forward to doing the sound tests and seeing what the noise floor is, what the quality of the build is, because that's going to be the real acid test. So that's coming up next. The room is done, and I finally get to use it.